predicting like there's like a 87% that this wavelength is indicating a window, right? And it's interesting because you're seeing this right with the large language model systems. You're seeing like, oh, it could do a whole email. Yeah, it can do a whole email because it knows the English language. Like they've created algorithms that literally have studied the human language and how we use human language in particular contexts. Anyways, the point is that electricity is a common denominator that we're going to talk about today. So please remember electricity. Electricity, right? Electrical activity in the brain is what they're reading. Now, why is that important to me? Why do I find that so interesting? I find it interesting because when you think about how electricity is measured, how sound is measured, all of these different things have vibrations and they have frequencies, right? So even the fact that there's literally a frequency of a particular vibration of a particular wavelength is coming in the computer and it's going through an algorithm. We hear it all the time. Words have power. What you say has power, the power of the tongue. Well, this is literally showing you that there is literal electrical activity. There's literal electrical power that they're researching to say, hey, like we're essentially going to get to a place where we could put a chip in a person's brain and alter their mood later down the line, right? Not now, later down the line. We could maybe help them with depression. And I'll share some of this stuff. A lot of Human Lab podcasts, they cover, has a couple episodes talking about this stuff. And it was interesting. One gentleman on his podcast was talking about how they had this open brain surgery and they were literally, some of these open brain surgeries, there's no pain receptors on the brain. So they could poke at the person's brain if the person's up during the brain surgery. Like they could talk to you and you got your skull literally open. And he was saying how literally at one point he was poking on the guy, a particular section, giving these electrical impulses into one side of the brain. And the person could not speak, but he wanted to speak. So, you gotta wonder like, okay, like that sounds like a hell of a weapon. And it's just interesting in terms of Neuralink. I'm not here to scare anybody, but I am here to have a conversation about, energy. I am here to have a conversation about what are they doing at Neuralink that is actually something that we already kind of do, but we're not aware of it, right? Like, I'm gonna dive into this because I work with the human body, and the human body is a very interesting thing because it's composed of so many different things, right? However, we're all made of like really basic stuff, right? When you think about it, like we're made of like water, we're made of like, different minerals and, like they say we're like stardust essentially. And so when you break us all the way down, it's kind of interesting that like we share the same material of everything else, but yet this common denominator that charges everything is like energy, right? Like literally, like it could be atoms. In this case, the source energy of what we're going to talk about is electricity. And so the thing that's in our brain, the thing that is basically giving us a consciousness that's helping us walk through the world is our brain. And our brain is getting literally a charge, an electrical charge based off how the neurons fire. But computers use electricity to compute zeros and ones. Okay, why does that? Okay, Cody, what does that mean? Okay, if your brain literally is responsible for your five senses, your hearing, your seeing, your smelling, your taste, your touch, literally everything. And this is how you receive the information from the outside world. So literally, light photons and our physical touch and our nervous system and sensory and motor neurons and how we interact, proprioception, neuroplasticity, all of the science geeks tune in, lock in, you go look it up. The point is that our nervous system is constantly adapting to an environment around us, right? It's one of the reasons why if somebody punched you in the face or you got shot, something traumatic happened to you, you always kind of you always on edge, right? You know, like when I work with people in boxing, I tell them all the time, you got to keep your hands up, right? It's until you get punched in the face and you bleeding and, you know, that you would then start to keep your hands up. It's a very interesting thing because the body is the best teacher. You know, once something happens to your body is always giving you a reminder like, hey, remember that? But the interesting thing about it is that our brain, our mind, our conscious is something that has full control over all of those things, right? And we're going to tie that into a bigger knot later at the very end when we're talking about something, when we're going to talk about willpower, right? Because will is a very, very important thing that's lacking today. But we're going to tie that knot later. But when we look at how essentially our brain is something that it is the boss, our brain, right? If our brain kind of go out, we're done, right? Obviously, you lose enough oxygen to the brain, everything starts to shut down. It's pretty much like you about to go, right? So the brain is the CEO. The brain is the CEO of the body, right? I mean, the heart can beat on its own without the brain to some degree, but for the most part, the brain is telling everything. The brain is pretty much responsible for how you interpret sound, how you visualize things. You know, the brain is helping you coordinate and facilitate all of these different complex systems in the body. So what does this tie into? Why would I tie how the brain is being energized through electricity, and why would I tie that into computers? Well, it's interesting. When I started to study computer science and I started to get interested in it, and I started to understand that, man, all of these super complex computations are just simple zeros and ones. So the same way how our body is so complex, but it goes from complex to simplicity. It goes from complex to simplicity. It doesn't go complex to some. It doesn't get simple and then complex, right? If you know what I mean. It literally is. We interact with the world, and everything is. We don't, like I said earlier, we don't fully understand how the brain does everything. So it's complex, right? It's something that we can't fully understand, but yet we can understand, what's in ourselves, right? We can understand the simple things, right? We have microscopes that can pretty much go like, oh, okay, that's like this, and it does this, and blah blah blah. But it's like we don't understand the brain, right? But we can understand the cells that's probably in the brain a little bit. So this thing that they're doing with Neuralink is called brain mapping. And brain mapping essentially, it's not nothing new. It's not like Neuralink has been. They're just the only ones doing it. It's a field, and it's a whole thing in itself, and it's been around. But it's interesting because brain mapping is essentially just mapping out the different regions of the brain, and they're studying the electrical activity and probably some other stuff in what exactly is going on over here. What's its relationship with here, and how does it do it here? So they're augmenting the brain. They're enhancing the brain. They're trying to decode language, but as we start to decode language, we also start to figure out, what affects our mood and maybe how to alter those things. So it's a very, very interesting thing that's occurring right now in science, and a lot of people are scared. But I think also importantly, people should pay attention, because you fear what you don't understand. It's important to really learn about certain things, at least just get a basic understanding of things, so that way you can kind of prepare and pivot and try to, in this case, spiritually speaking, adapt. Because we already see now, spiritually, people are lonely and nosy. I call it the lonely and nosy algorithm, that Instagram and TikTok and all of these things, because it's either for entertainment or just gossip reasons. People like to have an idea. It's literally, imagine the algorithm that left a block where people can watch other people and then talk about them behind closed doors. Well, now the algorithm is And again, it's not like a all and be all. I'm just saying that it feeds into that narrative. So if they've tested already these components in one capacity, well, now when we start to manually put things into the brain, it's about to get very, very interesting in terms of augmenting the human body, right, to enhance performance. So these are very ethical conversations that are going to happen. They already happen. They're happening with the experts in the industries, but I think it's important for creatives and normal people, just like us, that are not always in that space. We have to start thinking about, what does that mean energetically? What does that mean for us spiritually? Machine learning works, neural networks, all of this interrelated stuff, and you look at how we've been working. When you look at how, as a human being, we have done amazing things, man. I mean, we've done terrible things, but we've also done amazing things. This is why we're here, right? I mean, we probably won't be here for too long based on how the world looks, but for the most part, when you look at how we evolved as a human species to even get to a point where we can even design technology, right?